There is a version of you that gets everything you're praying for right now. The job, the platform, the relationship, the applause, and it breaks you instead of fulfilling you. That is not a scare tactic. That is a documented pattern. It happens to real people, quietly, every single day. Someone reaches the exact finish line they've been sprinting toward for years, and instead of peace, they feel a strange, hollow silence where the celebration was supposed to be. If you've ever climbed and felt lonelier at the top, if you've ever hit a goal and felt almost nothing, stay with me for the next 27 minutes, because I'm going to walk you through exactly why that happens, and more importantly, how to build a life where it doesn't happen to you. Here's the sentence. Everything today is built on. God was never grading your success. He has always been watching your character. Say that back to yourself, not as a nice quote, as a lens, because once you actually see your life through that lens, every closed door starts making sense, and so does every open one. Today, 5 truths. Roots before fruit, knowing your real capacity, receiving grace you didn't earn, resting on purpose instead of collapsing by accident, and last, the one almost nobody preaches clearly, the difference between guilt that transforms you and guilt that just wears you down. I'm also going to share a few real-life patterns along the way, the kind you've probably lived or watched someone close to you live, because principles only stick when you can see them in an actual life, not just hear them as an idea. Stay to the end. The last section is the one I get the most messages about, because it touches something almost everyone is quietly carrying and almost nobody talks about out loud. Let's start at the root, literally. Section 1, roots before fruit. There are 2 ways to grow a tree. Grow it in a greenhouse, no wind, no drought, every condition managed for you, and it shoots up fast, tall, green, impressive. And the first real storm that reaches it, it goes down, because its roots never had to hold on to anything. They never needed to. Or grow it outside, in real seasons, real dry years, real wind that doesn't ask permission. It grows slower. Some years it looks like it's barely growing at all. But underground, every year it's not growing upward, it's growing downward, spreading, anchoring, preparing. And when the storm comes, and it always comes, that tree bends and it stands while the greenhouse tree is already lying in the yard. Most of us were trained by culture, by comparison, sometimes even by well-meaning churches, to build like the greenhouse tree. Build the image first. Build what people can see first. Assume the roots will catch up eventually, once there's time. But think about anyone whose life has actually held up over decades, not for one viral season, not for one good year, but for real, sustained decades. They were never handed the harvest first. They were rooted first, usually in a season nobody was filming, nobody was clapping for, nobody even noticed. Here's a story worth sitting with. 2 people start the same job on the same day. One spends the first 2 years building visibility, always in the room where decisions get made, always positioning, always making sure the right people notice their wins. The other spends the first 2 years building competence in private, learning the parts of the job nobody sees, fixing the systems nobody thanks you for fixing, becoming genuinely reliable before becoming visible. 5 years in, the first person has had a faster rise and a rockier fall, because the visibility outran the substance, and eventually someone asked a hard question the substance couldn't answer. The second person had a slower rise, and it never really fell, because by the time people did notice, there was actually something underneath the reputation to hold it up. That's not a business principle. That's a spiritual one, wearing a business costume. Here's the part that's hard to sit with. A lot of us want the branches without doing the years of root work. We want the platform without becoming the kind of person who can carry a platform without it destroying them. We want the marriage without first becoming someone capable of sustaining one through the boring, unfilmed, unglamorous middle seasons. We want the leadership seat without the years of being tested in rooms where nobody was watching except the one who matters most. God is not slow with you because He doesn't care about your success. He is slow because He loves you too much to hand you fruit your roots cannot yet carry. And here's something worth remembering. When success does come too early, before the roots are ready, success does not create character flaws. It reveals them. Sudden money doesn't create insecurity. It exposes insecurity that was always quietly there, just never had fuel before. Sudden influence doesn't create a hunger for approval. It exposes a hunger that was always there, just never had an audience before. The harvest doesn't build the tree. The harvest reveals what kind of tree was actually growing the whole time. So when the door stays closed a little longer than you wanted, the promotion goes elsewhere. The relationship doesn't happen on your timeline. The platform stays small longer than feels fair. Consider a different interpretation than, "I'm stuck." Consider, "I'm rooting." Nobody photographs a foundation. Nobody puts a foundation on a highlight reel. But every single thing that has ever stood for decades was standing on one, poured slowly, in the dark, before anyone was watching. So here's the first shift, and I want you to actually sit with this question rather than just nod at it. If the answer to your prayer arrived today, exactly as you're asking for it, right now, would your roots hold it? Or would the first real storm expose that you were never quite ready to carry what you were asking God for? That question alone will change how you pray and eventually how you wait. Now, here's what happens the moment you start taking root building seriously. You start wanting to serve, to give, to pour into everyone around you. And that instinct is beautiful, but there's a very specific, very common way it goes wrong, and it happens to good-hearted people more than anyone else. Let's look at exactly what that looks like before it happens to you. Section 2. Know your capacity. Picture a small boat with a slow leak. Nothing dramatic at first, just a quiet drip nobody's paying attention to, because the boat is still floating just fine on its own. Now imagine that boat decides its calling is to rescue other boats. Good instinct, genuine compassion. It starts pulling people aboard, 10, then 20. More weight every time. More good reasons to keep saying yes to the next person who needs help. And eventually it sinks. Not because the mission was wrong, because nobody went back and patched the leak before loading the boat down with everyone else's weight. This is one of the most common and least talked about ways sincere, loving, capable people burn out. In ministry, at work, in friendships, in families, they confuse willingness with capacity. Their heart says yes before their structure has been checked to see if it can actually hold the yes. There's a kind of humility that almost nobody teaches, and it's this: knowing what you are not yet able to carry, and saying so before you're already underwater carrying it, not after. Think about the people you know who are always available, always the one everyone calls first, always saying yes to one more thing. Some of them are running on a deep, well-maintained hull. But some of them are running on a leak they haven't looked at in years, and they call the exhaustion sacrifice, when really it's just an unrepaired hole meeting an ocean that doesn't care how good the intentions were. This isn't permission to stop caring about people. This is permission to stop pretending you have unlimited capacity, because that pretending is exactly what sinks people who had every right intention in the world. Here's a practical way to check yourself. Honestly, when was the last time you said, "not yet," to something genuinely good, because you knew your own foundation needed attention first? If you can't remember, that's not a badge of honor. That's worth sitting with. There's also a subtler version of this leak: emotional capacity. Some of you are pouring wisdom and comfort into everyone around you, while your own soul hasn't had a real, honest Sabbath in months. You're showing up for everyone's crisis while quietly running on empty yourself and calling it faithfulness when it might just be an unaddressed leak. Wisdom is not coldness. Wisdom is not selfishness dressed up in spiritual language. Wisdom is what allows you to actually finish the race, not just be celebrated in year 2 and quietly gone by year 4, burned out, resentful, wondering what happened. Know your limits, not because your calling is small, because your calling deserves a vessel that isn't quietly taking on water while everyone praises how much weight it's carrying. Section 3. Grace. The thing you didn't earn and cannot lose. Now here's where things get tender, so slow down with me for a moment. There's a very old, very human belief that love has to be earned, that if you perform well enough, you'll finally become worthy of being loved, that if you fail badly enough, you'll finally exhaust whatever love was available to you. Almost everyone carries some version of this, usually planted long before they had words for it. From a parent whose warmth felt conditional on good behavior, from a culture that only celebrates output and results, from a version of religion that quietly turned faith into a performance review nobody ever passes for long. Grace is the direct interruption of that entire belief system. Grace means the favor was never about your performance to begin with. Not "you are loved because today was a good day." Just "you are loved." Full stop. Before the good day, before the bad day, before you even existed to have a single day at all. This is genuinely difficult for high achievers to receive, because if your whole identity has been built on earning things, unearned love feels almost suspicious. Surely there's a catch. Surely there's fine print. Surely I have to keep performing to keep it. There isn't, and you don't. Here's a small story that illustrates this well. Picture someone who spent years believing that if their parents really knew everything about them, every failure, every secret shame, the love would stop. And one day, out of exhaustion, they finally told the truth. All of it, braced for the withdrawal they were sure was coming. And the love didn't move, not because the failure didn't matter, but because it was never sitting on top of the failure in the first place. That moment, the moment the truth came out and the love stayed exactly where it was, that's the closest human picture we have of what grace actually is. And here's what grace does once a person really receives it, not just recites it as a nice phrase. It changes how you treat people who disappoint you, because once you understand you are loved, apart from your performance, you stop needing everyone around you to perform perfectly in order to deserve your patience. Watch how graceless people treat others, always calculating who deserves what, always keeping score, exhausting to be near. Watch how grace-filled people treat others. There's a softness there, a slowness to write people off, because they remember, I wasn't written off either, and it wasn't because I earned staying. And this is not an excuse to stop growing, and it's important to say that clearly, because some people hear, unconditional, and quietly translated into consequence-free or don't bother changing. That's not what this is. Grace isn't the absence of growth. Grace is the actual environment where real growth becomes possible, because shame has never once, in the history of anyone's life, made a person become their best self. Shame makes people hide better. Grace makes people grow, because they've stopped spending all their energy defending themselves and finally have energy left over to change. So if you're sitting here convinced you have to fix yourself before you're acceptable, flip the order completely. You are already acceptable. Now, from that security, you get to grow, not to earn what you already have, to become more of who you already are. That is a completely different engine to run an entire life on. If any of that just landed on something real in you, that's not a coincidence. That's usually a sign you're close to the thing you actually came here to hear. Stay with me, because next is something almost nobody wants to admit they need, and then we close with the section on guilt that I promised at the very start. For some of you, that last section is going to be worth more than everything else combined. Section 4. The strength hidden inside rest. There's a strange kind of pride that hides inside constant striving. It sounds like devotion. It sounds like discipline. Sometimes, if you look closely, it's just exhaustion wearing a spiritual costume. Somewhere along the way, a lot of us absorb the idea that rest is the reward you get after you've earned it, and striving is what proves you're serious about your faith, your work, your calling. So rest gets treated like a prize at the very end instead of a resource you're supposed to be using in the middle. But look at the actual pattern of anything alive. A field that never rests eventually produces less, not more. A muscle that never rests breaks down instead of building up. Growth literally happens in the recovery, not in the strain. A mind that never rests starts making worse decisions, no matter how much willpower is pushing it forward. Rest is not the opposite of productivity. Exhaustion is the opposite of productivity. Rest is quietly one of its requirements. There's an important difference between resting because you trust something steadier than your own effort is at work underneath you, and collapsing because you finally ran out of fuel. One is a decision. The other is a consequence you didn't choose. You want to become the person who rests on purpose, not the person who only stops moving once their body forces the stop. Think about what it would actually mean to believe, in your body and not just in your head, that you are not the only force holding your life together. Not that you stop working, not that you become passive or careless, but that underneath your effort there is something steadier than your effort, and you don't have to grip everything so tightly, as if the entire outcome depends on you never once blinking. Here's a pattern worth noticing in people who last. In marriages that go the distance, in ministries that outlive their founder's energy, in businesses and friendships and callings that are still standing after everyone else is burned out. They were rarely the ones who never stopped moving. They were the ones who learned exactly when to stop moving, so there was something left in them tomorrow. Consider the ones who didn't. Consider how many talented, sincere, gifted people you've watched flame out, not because they lacked ability, but because they never gave themselves permission to stop long enough to refill whatever they kept pouring out. Talent didn't save them, rest would have. If you've been running on fumes and quietly calling it faithfulness, hear this clearly. This is your permission. No, this is your instruction to rest. Not as a luxury you'll get to eventually. As a discipline you've been skipping, and skipping it isn't holiness. It's just quiet self-neglect, wearing a Bible verse as a disguise. Section 5. righteousness over condemnation. And now, the part I promised you at the very beginning. There is a very specific kind of exhaustion that has nothing to do with your schedule and everything to do with something you've been carrying that was supposed to have been put down a long time ago. Here's the pattern, and see if you recognize it. Something happens, a mistake, a failure, a moment you're genuinely not proud of, and instead of learning from it and releasing it, a person picks it up and starts carrying it everywhere, indefinitely. It stops being information about something you did. It slowly becomes identity about who you believe you fundamentally are. And here's the tragic part. That heaviness doesn't actually make anyone better. It doesn't make you more careful going forward. It doesn't make you more disciplined. It just makes you tired, and quietly, it makes you more distant from the exact source of strength you'd actually need in order to change. There's a crucial distinction here that almost nobody explains clearly: the difference between conviction and condemnation. Conviction says that specific action didn't reflect who you actually are, so turn back toward the right path. It's specific, it's constructive, it's aimed at movement, forward, toward repair. Condemnation says something completely different. It says, you are the mistake. It's not specific. It doesn't point anywhere useful. It's not constructive. It doesn't move you toward repair. It just moves you further into hiding, further into secrecy, further into a kind of self-punishment that somehow, no matter how much you pay into it, never seems to be enough to settle the account. Here's a way to test which one you're dealing with. If guilt were actually an effective long-term engine for real change, the most guilt-ridden people you personally know would also be the most transformed people you know. Notice, they're usually not. Usually it's the opposite. The people crushed under the heaviest self-condemnation are frequently the most stuck, not the most free, because condemnation quietly drains the exact energy a person needs to actually change course. Being made right isn't about somehow proving you never fall short. Nobody manages that. It's about no longer needing your own perfection as the foundation of your worth, so that when you do fall short, and everyone eventually does, it doesn't collapse your entire identity along with it. You get back up faster, not because the mistake didn't matter, but because your worth was never sitting on top of your mistakes to begin with. It was never sitting on your performance either. Remember grace from earlier in this video? These two truths were never actually separate ideas. They were always the same truth, wearing two different names. Here's something worth sitting with quietly. Picture someone who did something years ago they've never told a single soul about, carried alone, in silence, for years, aging them from the inside in a way nobody around them can see on the outside. And picture the exact same person finally understanding, really understanding, not just hearing, that the wait was never required in the first place. Not because the action was fine, but because the price for it was never supposed to be paid by carrying it forever. Watch what happens to a person's face, their posture, their whole presence, in the weeks after they actually put something like that down. It's not subtle. People notice, even when they can't say exactly what changed. So if there's a specific thing you've been carrying, something from years ago, something recent, something you've never told anyone in your life, I want you to look honestly at what it's actually doing to you. Is it making you better, or is it simply making you heavier? Because those are not the same thing, even though we often confuse them, and only one of them was ever actually the point. Put it down, not by pretending it never happened, by refusing to let it define what happens from here forward. So here's everything, tied together, one more time. Roots before fruit, because success without character built underneath it doesn't hold, no matter how good it looks on the way up. Know your capacity, because a good heart in a leaking boat still sinks, no matter how sincere the intention was. Receive grace, because you were never loved for your performance in the first place, and you're not going to lose that love over your worst day either. Rest on purpose, because the people who actually last aren't the ones who never stop moving. They're the ones who know exactly when to, and put down the guilt, because carrying it has never once, for anyone, made them more whole. Only lighter people move forward. Heavier people just stay in the same place, longer, calling it progress. If even one of these 5 landed on something real in you today, tell me which one in the comments. I read every single one, and honestly, when several of you write 0.3 or 0.5 in the same week, that's exactly what tells me what to unpack next. If this helped you see something differently, send it to the one person you know who is carrying more than they're letting on right now. And if you want more of this, honest conversations about character, grace, and the parts of faith almost nobody else is willing to say plainly, subscribe, because that's exactly what this channel exists to do. Until next time, build the roots. The fruit will hold, because this time it'll have something real underneath it, and no storm will find it hollow.